If I can have your attention here in the Media Center, we're going to roll into our media availability for today's Goodyear 400. We are joined by today's honorary starter, Jeff Burton, and our Grand Marshal, Ray Evernham, NASCAR Hall of Fame crew chief, team owner. I'm going to start with you, Jeff. The year 1999, you won both races here at this racetrack. How special was that year, and what are your memories from that?
My memories were that it was kind of linked together. We would come here and lead a lot of laps and run really well, and I would find a way to screw it up, or we'd have a bad pit stop or have to race this guy. And when I sat here, I realized how many wins I may have had without you here. But I we always came here and we always were fast, but we just couldn't win. And then won 2 in a row rain shortened races. And the one I wrecked off turn 4. It was raining and I wrecked, and we're done. Like, there's no way. It needs a front snout, and it rained enough where we couldn't get going again. And that one was pretty crazy. But just it kind of was, for me, it was kind of weird because we felt really good coming here but couldn't win, and then to win 2 like that back to back in that year, both of them were rain shortened. It was kind of odd, but maybe in a way, those races that you lose, you tend to think you never get them back, but there are times when you get some that you didn't deserve, and it kind of equals itself out, and that's what happened to me on those 2 days.
Ray, you've had so many great memories here at this racetrack throughout your career. What was one moment that really stands out to you?
Oh, wow. And Jeff's not going to like this one, but when we won the $1 million here, we just didn't run that good all day long. Our car was fast, sat on the pole, but never really got the race set up good and struggled all day long. We were back of the pack, front of the pack. Jeff's gotten the fence several times working on the car. I think we made 16 pit stops, and somehow we ended up in the lead with about 2 to go, and then here comes Jeff, and Jeff Gordon had to run him down into the parking lot here, I think, to keep us out front. But that day was a pretty special day for our team because we won the Winston Million, and we really didn't have a winning car that day.
Okay, well, we're going to open the floor for questions. If you have a question, get a wireless mic to you. We're going to start with Barry, and then we'll go to Jacob.
Barry Richmond, WAKG, Piedmont Broadcasting Corporation. Ray, can you maybe contrast and compare what it's like being a crew chief in your day and what it takes today, and maybe even if some of the responsibilities have been divided up compared to what it used to be?
I can only comment on what I think I know. I'm not down in the fight anymore, but when I was crew chief, the teams were smaller, and we didn't have all of the data that you have now. Your data was your driver, it was shock travel, it was tire pressure, tire wear, those things, and pretty much hands-on working with a smaller group of guys. And now the tools that the crew chiefs use have advanced so much. We thought we were cool when we had some laser setup stuff, right? And now everything's digital, and data, and the computers and the cars have data on them. And I think that the crew chiefs now have 2 or 3 different people, and they've got to go through that data and figure out how to best get that car to work and with their driver and call their race. So I think some of the mechanical things have been handed to other people on the team, like putting the car together. We did a lot of the design work on our car. Crew chief was largely responsible. I mean, I tell him where the frame rails would go and the body and all that stuff. And now, it's a much different point. So I think the crew chief job now is not so much designing the car, keeping the team going. It's processing and using the tools and the data to figure out how to make your car go fast.
And likewise, Jeff, as a driver, how is it different now with the responsibilities and expectations drivers have?
Yes, so drivers today, much the way Ray talked about crew chiefs, have a completely different way they prepare. We didn't have simulators. We didn't have the amount of data that they have available to them. Everything they do is analyzed. They know to a tenth of a second if you got beaten getting to pit road. When I was driving, you could kind of tell them whatever story you wanted them to hear, and that doesn't happen anymore. They know it before you, and so you can't really hide anything anymore. I will say I think these drivers work harder at being race car drivers than we did, because of the tools they have and because of the way that they're able to be graded in everything that they do. And it's just a different world. And I think that they prepare more like a professional quarterback than we did. We worked and we would talk and we'd have conversations with the crew chiefs and maybe sit down with an engineer and discuss things. But these guys, every bit of everything they're doing is being analyzed, which is great. But at the same time, the problem with that is, and Ray, I'm sure Ray can confirm this, is not everybody drives the same. And so who do you compare to? So when your crew chief or your engineer is saying, well, this guy is doing this. Well, great. I can't. And so when do you as a driver start adjusting to the data that you now have? Jeff and I didn't have to have that argument. We would at a test. Like we would go test and you could compare yourself to your teammate. But when you would get to the racetrack, you're just, hey, Ray, my car won't do this. And Ray may say, well, it looks like this. But now you can look at the data and say, hey, you're doing this and that guy's not. And so the temptation is for the crew chief to say, all right, you need to change to this versus the car changing to the driver. And maybe the driver does need to change. You just never know. So that's a dynamic that we never had to deal with.
We're going to go to Jacob, then to Chris, then to Pete, then to Deb.
Jacob Seelman, Raceface Digital. Ray, this whole weekend is a celebration, kind of the history of the sport. And I know back at the beginning of this year, you actually have dipped your fingers into another part of the history of the sport. I'm curious if you can give any insight into, after you and Rob purchased the IROC brand early this year, kind of what you'd like to do with that, or if you guys have any plans for, what that may look like going forward as you start to work with it.
Well, you can see all the excitement around the throwback weekend here, and what an incredible job NASCAR and the Hall of Fame have done with the alumni area. So it says that motorsports history is popular right now, and we were able to purchase the IROC brand, and we're again just putting a reunion back together, finding how many cars there are out there, how many drivers are out there, how many people are still excited about the brand. So don't really have a lot of plans yet, other than the one reunion scheduled for July. But as you can see with the excitement here, I think this throwback weekend at Darlington has done a ton for Darlington itself and for this race and for the racetrack because of the history. So to continue to tell the story, the foundation of our motorsports, our heroes of all those things, really important to me. So that was really the biggest reason for getting to try and get that IROC brand back, because I wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for that series.
Sure. Purely out of curiosity, is there realistically any hope maybe that with the brand acquisition we could see a race or races someday, or do you think that's maybe not realistic?
It's really hard to say, realistic, not realistic. It's that'd be so far down the future. Again, right now, it's about history. It's about finding doing the old cars. I've gotten really hooked on the vintage racing and some of the historical stuff right now. So, that's as far as we're thinking.
Okay, we'll go next to Chris, then to Pete, then to Deb, then the Godfather. No, Chris, he's right there.
Hi, Chris Day from the Post and Courier. I just wanted to ask what it's like to come back to Darlington and see how everything has changed and is being updated, and you talked a little bit about Throwback Weekend, but can you go into a little bit more detail of what it means to you guys?
First, this is an honor for me. This has always been one of my favorite racetracks. As I said, I love the history of the sport, and there's, you come through the tunnel here or through the gate, the legends of the sport are staring right at you, right? Everybody that, this is the place. If you were going to make your mark in NASCAR, this is a place that you wanted to have certainly on your resume. And I've had such a long, great relationship with Goodyear. I think I gave a lot of my age away there when we were up in the Goodyear suite a little while ago, and I said I've been winning races on Goodyear tires since the 70s, and to come back and be asked to be Grand Marshal and be part of the Throwback Weekend in the Goodyear 400, it is a really great honor, because the older you get and you look back on your career, it's really nice to be remembered and it's nice to be recognized. And it is again amazing what I've seen going on in that alumni tent and how well a lot of the legends of our sport are treated around here. It makes you feel pretty good.
When I was a kid, my dad would bring myself and my two brothers, and we would sit in the covered grandstands off of what is now Turn 2. And my ears would ring for 4 or 5 days after, and I just thought it was the best damn thing in the world. And I realize now it probably wasn't, but it was great then. And then I came here driving for my father in an Xfinity race, and went to the rookie meeting, where the rookie meeting pretty much consisted of, if you screw up, you're going to die. That was the message. And they just scare the hell out of you. And then to come here and win an Xfinity race, win a Cup race, and then to be back in this situation as a kid sitting in the grandstand, there's no way my brain could have ever wrapped itself around doing this and having an opportunity to even race on this racetrack, where I was watching Cale Yarborough, who was just, I thought, the best race car driver in the world, and still claimed to be. He's certainly one of the best. And to come back here and be here doing it with Ray, I mean, it really is an honor. And to be at this racetrack makes it even that much more, because this is, if you look at who's won races here, it's a long list of the who's, and it's just a really, really cool weekend, and one of in my eyes, one of the best racetracks in the world.
Pete?
Pete Iacobelli, Associated Press. Ray, Jeff, after today, we're halfway through the regular season of NASCAR. What have you liked? What have you seen out of the season? And what could we be talking about the second half of the season when this wraps up here on Labor Day?
Well, I think what we've learned the last 2 years is we don't know what's going to happen. You know, the playoffs, you think about, Logano and Blaney. Raise your hand if you had them winning the playoffs, the championship this time of year those 2 years. And so be right when it counts. Put yourself in position and then be right when it counts. So it's very hard to know what's going to happen. This is the most competitive. If you guys today, the timing and scoring is right there. You watch the 5th place car and the 30th place car today after 30 laps, and if they're running more than 3/10 difference, I'll be shocked. When Ray and I were competing, that would be about 7 or 8 tenths difference. It is the most competitive that it's ever been throughout the field. And so what that means is that much and you're on the wrong side of it, but that much and you're on the positive side of it. And we've seen it the last 2 years, where both of those teams and drivers got right at the right time and won championships. And I don't know that that's the formula. They didn't do it intentionally. We're going to not run as well as we want to in the regular season and run good in the playoffs, but that's what they did. And so if they did it, others can as well. So don't count anyone out. If they make the playoffs, they have a shot.
And I think what I like, what I've seen, and I've not been able to get to a lot of races right now, but I like what I see with the excitement, the fans here. I see a lot of older people, younger people. I see the kid zones. I see, when I turn the television on at home, I see the stands more full. I see people talking more in a positive way about our sport. So, and then even, again, we'll go back to throwback weekend. I see NASCAR really working hard to address the old and the new, doing things that we've done with this new car, which I think is, brilliant. I like the new car. I think it is really opening up the entry to new car owners, to new manufacturers. You can come in and be competitive because it is based on engineering and data. So, again, watching as a fan now, not being as much involved, I really like what I see going on around the sport to make it really entertaining and exciting. And like Jeff said, the racing has been really, really good. And I like that some of the drivers are getting a little bit polarizing. I like that. Like we talk about Jeff Gordon and Dale Earnhardt, they were polarizing. Jeff Burton, when they came, he had a bunch of fans and people. So, and we're seeing more and more of that. And from the driver's standpoint, I think this is pretty good we're in a pretty good place with the young driver pool. You know, you see these names popping up. These kids, they look about 15 years old, and they're winning races. You know, and so I see a lot of good indicators that the sport's healthy.
Go next to Deb, and then we'll finish with Dave Moody.
Deb Williams, Auto Week. Jeff, you were talking about how today's drivers work harder at being drivers than you felt that you did during your career. What are some of the frustrations that you see Harrison experiencing that are foreign to you or you wouldn't have seen in your day as a driver?
So the biggest, you hear drivers talking a lot about passing. It's hard to pass. Well, yeah, when you're only a tenth of a second faster than someone, it's going to be hard to pass. And so what happens is that the harder you try, the further back you go. Like, you actually can over try. You have to, and we did some of this, especially here. If you tried to pass someone and you got the timing wrong over in 1 and 2, 2 or 3 of them could get by you down the back straightaway. You had to really think about your passes. It's like that everywhere now. So when you come into this sport, you're like, into this series, I'm going to be aggressive. I'm going to go do these things. And you're actually, in many ways with this car, the harder you drive it, the worse it gets. There's a limit. And when you cross that limit, it then falls off the cliff. So the guys that have adjusted to it the best find that limit, and they operate right there. Well, the limit that we had, because of the design of the car, when the car would start to spin, it would catch itself. Like, aerodynamically, it made more downforce as the car started to spin. These cars make less downforce when they start to turn around. So and then when you cross that, it's worse, and everybody around you is running close to the same speed as you. So it's just a different style of racing because the speeds are so similar, and in many cases, trying to make that pass gets you in trouble. So understanding when to make the pass and when not to make the pass, and when to be okay with, all right, that guy, he and I are the same pace. What is the little thing that I have to do to be better? Our adjustments from a driver's standpoint, and even talking driver to crew chief, it was bigger because the speeds were further apart. And I mean, Jeff and I may be somewhere running the same speed, but no one else around us is running the same speed. Now, everybody around you is running very close to the same speed. And that's, I think, when drivers come in here after the race and they talk about, well, you can't pass, and that's what it's about, is that it's just so competitive. I actually think that's a good thing. You know, if that's what's made, if you think about last week's race, that's what made that race so great, right, is that it's hard to pass. That's what Dover was a great race. And by the way, it was hard to pass 20 years ago. It took me, I ran Matt Kenseth down. I was 2.5 seconds a lap faster, 2.5 tenths of a second faster than he was. I ran him down. It took me 15 laps, 20 laps to pass him. That's the beauty of the sport, is that the guy in front of you, he can change his tactic to take away your advantage. He's going to put you in a position that you don't want to be in. That skill has always been here. We call it air blocking now. Well, I don't know. We could have called it air blocking then. You don't give the guy behind you what he wants. That's always been part of the sport. And it's just there's more cars that can run similar pace, and it just gets frustrating. And then you start trying harder, and that gets you in trouble. Then you try even harder, and I think that's the biggest difference.
Dave Moody, Motor Racing Network and Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. You both talked about the importance under this format, particularly of being the best when it matters the most. Can you, or did you, as driver and crew chief, keep a little something in your hip pocket technologically or setup-wise until we got on into those late races of the year and you needed it, or was it just more attitudinal? We always saw Jimmy and Chad. They always seemed like they had an extra inch in the throttle linkage when it came playoff time. Is that technology or is that attitude?
Well, we historically on the 24 team in our first few years, even the first few championships we won, we historically fell off at the end of the year. If you look at it, August was not a good month for us in September, and we'd have this big point lead, and man, Earnhardt had almost beat us, or Dale Jarrett almost took it away from us, one year. But in reality, we took a hard look at that. So we did. We actually looked at how we were resting our crew members, how we were resting Jeff, having some newer cars and holding back on some of the things that we wanted to bring out, whether that was an engine package or aerodynamic package. And we had a good finish to the 98 season, and it was because of that. And that is a good point. But today, I don't know that you can hold back anything. If you can find a half a tenth, you've got to be after it, because if you don't use it, I always tell everybody, I'm not the only person that ever had a great idea. You got to get to that first, because somebody else is going to think about it if you don't use it. So I think in today's world, if I could find any kind of advantage, I'd throw it on as quick as I could, because Jeff can tell you, you don't always get a chance to win one of these races. These races are hard to win, so when you get a shot to win it, you better take it.
I always thought I was given everything I had, and then the playoffs came. Then the format came where we're going to race these number of cars have a chance to win a championship. And I found out there was a little something left that I didn't know was there. And the reason why is because when you look, Jeff Gordon doesn't block me on the way he blocked me on the last lap, on the fifth lap. He's got his hand out the window. Hey man, go on. And the same thing happens when the playoffs start. There's no more pointing out the window. And so if that's the case, that means you got to find a way. You got to find, and now you're not racing this year-long point thing. Yep, I got this. I mean, there were a lot of years that these guys, yes, they would have been disappointed to not win a championship. But the worst-case scenario is they were going to finish third or fourth or something with 10 races to go. Well, you compare that today, 16 of them have a chance to win a championship. And so now it's new life. It's new energy. And the people that aren't making it know if they could be one of those 16, what happens to them. So emotionally, yes, you do find a way to take it to the next level that you didn't think was there. And it probably was a good thing that we didn't know it was there because of the way that format worked. It was a year-long versus what we have now. And now you get points for winning a stage. You get points for all, winning. I mean, it's just way more intense. And I think that that's brought more out in everybody, crew chiefs, drivers, the whole industry.
Well, gentlemen, thank you again for all the hard work you've put in over the years to make our sport what it is today, and we appreciate you being here for the Goodyear 400. So good luck today in your honorary duties, and have an enjoyable remainder of your Sunday.
All right, there's the checkered flag. Great job, driver.